Have you ever found yourself wrestling with this idea of God? This huge, ancient puzzle. How can God be perfectly just, demanding that wrongs be made right, but at the same time be infinitely merciful and full of grace? It feels like a total contradiction, right? Are we talking about a stern judge or a loving parent?
So let's break it down. On one side of the ring, you've got what we call retributive justice. This is the idea of a cosmic scale that needs balancing. You do something wrong, you create a debt, and a punishment is the only way to pay it. It's that classic eye for an eye principle. But then, in the other corner, you have grace. And grace is this wild, radical idea of unconditional forgiveness. It just wipes the slate clean, no questions asked. It's not earned, it's a pure gift.
And, well, these two ideas seem to be locked in a constant tug-of-war. I mean, if justice absolutely demands payment, how can forgiveness possibly be free? And if God is all about mercy, where does that leave accountability? It really feels like you can't have both. It seems like a core contradiction.
But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if the problem isn't that justice and grace are opposites? What if the problem is how we've been defining justice in the first place?
Now this is the pivot. This is the game changer. Imagine for a second that the main goal of justice isn't to punish the person who did wrong, but to actually heal the harm they caused, to restore what was broken, to actually, genuinely, make things right for everyone involved.
And there's a name for this idea. It's called restorative justice. It's a whole different way of thinking about wrongdoing. It's not about revenge or retribution. It's all about repair. It's a process where everyone who is affected, the victim, the offender, even the wider community, comes together to figure out how to heal the damage that was done.
And check out how this changes the questions we ask. The old way focuses on abstract rules. What law was broken? What's the punishment? But this new framework gets deeply personal. It asks, who got hurt here? What do they need to heal? And whose job is it to start fixing this? What do we all need to do to truly make things right? See the difference? It's all about relationships.
Okay, so if justice is really about mending relationships and making things right, what's the engine behind all that? What's the driving force? Well, according to some of the greatest thinkers in history, the answer is actually pretty simple. The philosopher Augustine basically said that love is the ultimate lens for everything. He argued that any interpretation of Scripture, any theological idea, any system of ethics has to be measured against this one standard. Does it increase our love for God and for each other? If it doesn't, it's the wrong interpretation. So love becomes the ultimate litmus test for what justice really, truly means.
So what does that mean for us? It means that if God's primary motivation is love, and that's a big if, but let's go with it, then divine justice can't be some cold, impersonal accounting of debts. It has to be relational. Its entire purpose has to be about mending the brokenness between people and ultimately between all of us and God.
Now, this idea of a restorative, love-driven justice isn't just some dusty old philosophical theory. For Christians, it becomes this living, breathing reality in the person of Jesus. It's what he was all about.
Just think about this one teaching, love your enemies. I mean, that's a direct challenge to the entire system of retribution, right? It totally flips the script. It says the goal isn't to get even. The goal is to start a process of restoration, even with the very people who have hurt you. It's aiming for something completely different.
And just look at what he did. When he saw people being excluded and pushed to the margins, he brought them back into the community by eating with them. When people were crushed by shame, he didn't pile on. He publicly forgave them. When he was met with violence, his response was to heal. His whole life was basically a masterclass in restorative justice in action.
The theologian C.F.D. Moule just nails this idea. He said that real justice begins, and here's the paradox, when the victim lets go of a simple tit-for-tat demand for retribution and instead becomes willing to meet the damage with repair. That willingness to forgive isn't abandoning justice, it's the very thing that unlocks a deeper, more powerful form of justice.
And this changes everything, especially how we see the crucifixion. It's no longer about an angry God demanding a blood payment. No. Instead, it becomes the ultimate act of restorative justice. It's God, in Jesus, absorbing the full cost of all the world's pain and wrongdoing, paying the price of forgiveness himself, all to make reconciliation, the mending of that ultimate broken relationship, possible for every single one of us.
Okay, wow. Let's pull all these threads together. We started with this big paradox, right? This massive conflict between a just God and a merciful God. So where does this new perspective leave us?
Well, we saw that the contradiction only really works if you're stuck in that old retributive model. But as soon as we shift the paradigm to a restorative model, justice becomes about making things right. Love is the motivation behind it, and the goal is always to mend broken relationships. So in this view, grace isn't the opposite of justice at all. Grace is the engine. It's the fuel that makes true, deep, restorative justice possible.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Divine justice isn't a cosmic scale that needs to be perfectly balanced. It's a relationship that needs to be perfectly restored. The goal isn't payment. The goal is wholeness. The goal is healing.
And that brings this huge theological idea right back down to earth, right into our own lives. Because if God's justice is really all about restoration, maybe ours should be too. So it kind of leaves us with a question to sit with, doesn't it? In our own world, in our own relationships and communities, who is it that needs a little less judgment from us and a little more of that hard, beautiful work of making things right?